today we're going to be discussing what it actually looks like to be the true fiduciary of the client. And that is when they have multiple options on the table. And I think the default for agents is to immediately think of the transaction. If you have a homeowner in this scenario and they're thinking of moving, most agents default to, great, I have a listing and I'm going to help you purchase. And I would caution you from defaulting immediately to that mindset. Now, here's why. I understand it's two sides, maybe even more on a transaction. It's exciting. You start calculating the numbers. But I need you to ask yourself, if you can find a way to turn this one client into maybe 5 or 7 clients through referrals, would you do that? The answer should be yes. And I'm going to show you how it may be worth it to show them an option in which maybe they don't do exactly what you want them to do. Maybe they choose to keep the house and buy something, or maybe they don't do anything and it's best for them to just stay put. You may think to yourself, well, yeah, great, I just negotiated myself out of 2 sides to a transaction. And which I would say, again, if you can do right by your clients, you will get referrals that are going to be 5x what this one client can give you. So I'm going to share my screen. There's a model here and it's exciting. So I don't have a name for it, but I kind of have a descriptor for it, if you will. And it is that you are going to help somebody navigate all of the options that are ahead of them. And even that, I know I may lose some people because it may be an overwhelming concept. And I'm going to kind of walk you through how I do this and how I think most agents should tackle this situation. This is a real life scenario. We had an agent, the homeowner, they were door knocking. The homeowner said, I may want to sell. I don't know if it's the best option. I don't really know. There's too many. They were just overwhelmed. So here's what we're going to be doing. We're going to help them see all of the possibilities ahead of them without overwhelming them. Or the opposite side of the spectrum is, yeah, I'll help you sell this and move. We don't know if that's the best for them. So here's what we're going to be doing. Here's the model. Here's your real job as the agent. Your first job is to understand, asking them questions. I can't tell you how many times our agents just immediately go and default to telling. Here's what you should do, and here's why. It needs to be their idea. They need to come to that self-realization by you asking them questions and showing them options. So number 1 is understand, what are their goals, timeline, what's their lifestyle. Number 2 is you're actually going to, on your own time, you're going to walk through all of the key options that they have, and you're actually going to run the numbers for each of those options. And then you're going to sit down with the client and you're going to show them all of the options, the pros, the cons, the money, the finances behind it, the lifestyle that's going to come along with those options. And then you're going to let the data lead the way while you guide them towards what is their best option. And it says right here, stop presenting one recommendation, start presenting a decision map. Again, presenting one recommendation is how agents can get one transaction. That's great. It works for a lot of people. However, when you can start presenting them a decision map and you become the true fiduciary, and they can look back at your interaction and say, that agent is worth their weight in gold, and I will recommend everybody to that agent. Now you've just multiplied your opportunities. So the decision highway. And again, we're going to use this real life example because there's quite literally thousands of different scenarios you can run into. Homeowner is not sure if they want to just stay where they are or if they should move. Now, for a lot of agents, like I said, they may default to, well, let me just show you what your home is worth, and you can decide if you want to sell it or not. But we know nobody is that simple, and there's no scenario that is that simple. So here's the visual, and I love that it made this map for me because this is truly how I like to view it. Currently, they have one road that they're on, and that is that they stay put. I wouldn't even call it an exit. I would say it's just the straightaway. If nothing changes, they keep going straight on this road. However, if they decide to maybe sell the home and then buy replacement property, which again, that's what most agents are going to default to, that's one route. That's one exit, if you will. If they don't do that, then there's another option, and that is to actually keep the property that they're in, rent it out, and still go out and buy a property. So they would essentially they would increase their portfolio. Now, here's how we're going to navigate this. Let me go forward one step. Here's how we would navigate. Here's how we would navigate this. I want you as the agent, not with the client, on your own time. I want you to allow yourself to go down each path all the way. Like, I want you to pretend that's what they chose and use all of the data and find all of the reports that you would need to walk them down that path. So the first one is to stay put. Here are the things that you would need to think about when it's time to talk to them about this exit, this option. What happens if we do nothing? Well, let's look at what is your current mortgage? Is your income going to change? Okay. What is your existing equity position? Like, how much equity do you have in the house? And for those of you that don't know how to calculate that, you'd better start learning. If their house is worth $800,000, their mortgage balance is $400,000, then their equity is $400,000. Home functionality and renovation cost. This is something that people need to understand is, well, I understand that you want to stay here. I also see that maybe your roof needs replaced and maybe there's other things that you'll need to make adjustments to. Let's just take those things into account. Future space needs and lifestyle fit. If they are maybe 3 years away from being an empty nester, well, are you really going to need this much space in the future? It might be worth it to get rid of it, or maybe do you have aging parents that may move in with you that you need to know about? Expected ownership timeline. Now, this is probably one of the most powerful numbers that you should know, and that again, it will impress your client. Is, hey, your home is worth $800,000, give or take. In this area, we can see historically that homes appreciate at about 4%. I'm just using a number, by the way, 4%. Therefore, let's calculate what your projected home appreciation will be in year 5, in year 10, because that's a part of your wealth building journey. So I just want you to see staying put doesn't necessarily mean you're losing money. If anything, because you're hanging on to this asset, your appreciation, your wealth is appreciating. And then last but not least, doing nothing is still a decision. Okay. And for some people, staying put may be the best financial or lifestyle choice for them. Again, this goes back to, are you the fiduciary? What does it look like to your client when an agent sits down with them and says, hey, look, I want you to look at this option. If you just do nothing, if you stay put and you do nothing, I want you to see what that reality looks like. Let me take you to the future 10 years and let me show you what has happened to your wealth. If you do that, you will show that client that you're not in it for the money. You're just not trying to make a quick buck. You're trying to build a relationship and build a referral system. Now, let's look at step 2, or exit number 2. What happens if they sell and buy? They sell this house, and with that, they buy a replacement property. This is also known as a move up or a downsize client. So here's what you would need. Again, this is all the stuff that you're going to do on your own time. Let's pretend that they're not staying put. Let's pretend that there is not a third option. We're just going to pretend like they went with option number 2. So let's run all the numbers. And as I'm running these numbers, I'm going to realize, oh, actually, you know what? I need that report also. Oh, I need to do that report as well. So it's nice to do this in advance. So first of all, first part of the equation is the home sale. Well, we're going to have to do a CMA. You're going to have to do a CMA on what their current property is valued at in this market. What are buyers paying in this market for their home? Now, again, let's go a step further, right? We're pretending they chose this. What else would I need? Well, they're going to want to know what their actual net proceeds are. So I'm going to head on over to our escrow officer and say, hey, This is the projected sale price. This is the projected compensation. I want you to also show any fees that they're going to incur. And I want you to give me a seller net sheet, pretty please. Now you have a net sheet. You have what I say is the golden number. This is actually what they're going to be walking away with. And then, by the way, polish up on your info. Are they single or married? Are they going to get taxed on their capital gains? Are they under that threshold where they can avoid it? Now, what are they going to do with those net proceeds? Well, they're going to take that and they're going to put it as a down payment on the next property. Well, what's that next property? What's their budget? If they say their budget is $1 million and they are going to walk away with net proceeds in the amount of $400,000, well, let's also just take a peek at what that purchase looks like. What does that new payment look like, give or take, right? What would it look like to buy a $1 million house with a $400,000 down payment and essentially a $600,000 mortgage? And then, of course, well, do we have to sell and buy at the same time? Because we know something, and that is when you're trying to sell your house while buying another one and they're contingent upon one another, well, your offer doesn't seem, doesn't it? It does seem, it is not as appealing, just flat out, plain and simple. The next seller that you may be working with for your current client, they may not like the offer that there's a contingency. So would we be okay with, out of those $400,000 in proceeds, we'd be okay with taking maybe $10,000 out, just putting towards a rental in the meantime while we look for a replacement property? Or do we need to be contingent? Are we not able to do that? So again, what would it look like if you said, here's option one, stay put, here's what appreciation looks like, here's what you may need to make changes to your house. Okay, we're not going to do that. Let's look at option two. Look at all this information that I have for you. And by the way, when you sit down with this client, you should have 3 packets: option one, option two, option three. And that is just going to show them how well prepared you are. They may not even look at option three. They may say, we definitely don't want to do that. Okay, great. Let's toss it. We don't need that. Let's look at options 1 and 2. All right, now option 3. What would it look like if they kept their current house as a rental and they bought a replacement, or not, yeah, they bought a replacement property, essentially increasing their portfolio from 1 property to 2 properties? Well, again, let's pretend option 1 and option 2 were not chosen. And let's pretend our client, which we haven't met with yet, they choose option 3. Well, then let's do all the data and the research that we have to do in advance. So here's what we're going to have to do. We're going to have to look at we're going to have to run another CMA. What is the CMA? What is the projected rent for this current home? Not only that, but also what does that rent look like compared to your mortgage payment? Because that's not going to go away. So let's just use a really, really, really easy example. And this is not accurate by any means. Let's pretend their mortgage payment is $2,500 a month. And the rents look like it's going to be about $3,000 per month. Well, hot dog, they're going to get $500 in profits, not profits, in gross rents. Now, I say gross because they need to understand something. This is what you're going to talk to them about. They need to understand that they're going to make $6,000 a year in gross income, but that does not include taxes, insurance. It doesn't include repairs. Maybe the toilets need to be replaced, pipe bursts. Maybe the roof finally does need to be replaced. So they need to take into account things like that. And it's your job, when they look at exit number 3, option number 3, that they think about all those things. Another thing that they may need to consider is, well, hey, look, I appreciate that you want to keep your current house and you want to buy something else, but do you have the cash for the down payment? If the answer is yes, fantastic. We don't even need to talk about that. If the answer is no, well, what may we have to do? We may have to take out some equity of your current house, also known as a HELOC, home equity line of credit. But here's the catch with that. You have to make monthly payments on that. So if your mortgage was $2,500 a month And taking out your HELOC adds $600 a month in payments on the HELOC loan. Well, if you did the math, now you're at $3,100 in monthly debt service, and your rent is only $3,000. So you would be losing $100 per month. Now, here's something that is worth having the conversation with them about, though. What does home value tend to do over time? It appreciates. And we already looked at the appreciation in step one. So we already know what the appreciation is. So, yes, you will be spending $100 a month to keep this house as this home appreciates at an incredibly high rate, if I'm being honest. Also, something else to consider, what does rent tend to do over time? It tends to increase. So, yes, you'll be losing $100 a month in that first year. However, what would it look like in year three? Now, here's the thing, and this is why it's important that you present this and you let them choose. Are you okay with losing $100 a month for maybe a year before you can increase the rent by $100 and now break even? And then by year three, you're actually earning an extra $100. And then by year four, for some people, that is not worth the trade-off. Now, for others, they may say, well, I'm paying $100 for the first year a month, and then after that, I'm breaking even, but I'm keeping this asset that is a tax shelter. It's a huge appreciation asset. It's the biggest asset that I have next to the home that I'm buying. So maybe that's worth it for me. And that's where you, the agent, your job is to show them what that looks like. Now, this is not something I would necessarily show them, but this is how I want us to understand it. Here is how the roads, the options compare. So to stay put, the disruption is the lowest. It's literally nothing, right? The biggest disruption was meeting with you. To sell and buy, that's a moderate disruption. It's a big deal, but the reason it's moderate is because it's not nearly as disruptive as now keeping a rental, being a landlord, making sure it's rented out, and buying your replacement property. Equity access, stay put, you don't access any of the equity, you leave that alone. Sell and buy, you're unloading all the equity, you're unlocking it, you're selling your asset, taking the profits, the equity, and you're putting it back into something else. So you're opening all the equity. Keep and buy, this is where you're using the HELOC. You're essentially leveraging your current house to buy the next one. Okay. Let me see. Anything else that I'd want to talk? Wealth building. This is a big one. And this is a phrase that I would use with all of my clients. I would say it jokingly, but the beauty of real estate is it's actually come into fruition many times, is I used to tell them, I would say, look, I'm not going to advise you to do something that I would feel guilty about or bad about, because the truth is, whatever you decide, I still expect to be coming over for barbecues, and I want you to feel good about that, which is another way of saying, I want to build your wealth. And if I don't build your wealth, I won't feel very good about myself. So let's look at the wealth building. Stay put, same, it all stays the same. Single asset, yes, it appreciates though. To sell and buy, well, you're still keeping one asset. It's just that you're upgrading that asset. To keep the rental and buy, you're actually growing your portfolio. Now you have two appreciating assets, one of which is actually paid for. And then, of course, the complexity, I would say that's similar to disruption, none, moderate, and then the most complex. And then I want to focus on this. There isn't one best answer. There's a best answer for this client. So the reason I'm saying that is, if I were to be advising somebody that is really has a very low risk tolerance, they don't like any disruption, they don't like any risk, then to keep and buy is the worst answer for them. They would not want to do that. Now, somebody like me, I would absolutely think that to keep the rental and to buy is the best option, because I have a very high tolerance for risk. So here are the 4 decision filters. And again, this is something you may show them. Hey, here are the things that I want you to kind of weigh. lifestyle. Does this fit what you want in your life? Staying put, is that okay with you? If it is, then fantastic. Let's stop this conversation now and let me know who else you know that would that would benefit from this conversation. Or if somebody says, "No, I want to retire in real estate. That's my lifestyle goal." Well, then we're going to need to get that rental and buy a new one. Monthly cash flow, can you control the new obligations? I said plural because if you stay put, I'm assuming you can keep that monthly obligation of your mortgage. If you move to a bigger house, well, that's most likely a different monthly mortgage, right? I mean, a lot of times it might be higher. Um, if you keep the rental and you buy, well, now that's a huge change in your cash flow, because can the monthly mortgage on your first house and the HELOC, if that's what you're doing, stay within range of the rents? And then, of course, can you afford your new mortgage payment? Long-term wealth, does this accelerate the path that you want to be on? And then, of course, risk and complexity. That's more of a personality thing, right? So here is the old language and here is the new language. The old way was to be the salesperson. Are you thinking about selling? Not a great question. It's a yes, no question, to be honest. I don't like it in any way. The new language is you're the guide, you're the fiduciary. Before we talk about selling, let's look at all three options: staying, selling and buying, or keeping this as a rental and then buying. Let's run the numbers and see which road gets you closest to what you actually want. Now, here's what most agents would do. Most B-level agents would at least say that, and then they would just say, which one would you like to do? And maybe the client says, well, what is the rent for? I'm not entirely sure. It's probably close, right? Versus, I'm glad you asked. Let me pull out the three options that we've already kind of planned out for you. Let's look through them. Let's walk through them, and you can tell me which one fits your goals and your vision. And then, of course, this is the framework that we kind of went through. Now, this says three options. It by no means has to be three options. It may be two options. Somebody may say, hey, I know for sure I do not want to stay put. I either want to sell this and get something bigger, or rent this and get something bigger. So then there's only two options. Great. I'm just going to run both of those options for you. So first of all, what's the client goal? This should be almost like one of your first conversations, your intake questions, if you will. What do they want to accomplish? What does that future goal look like? And then I'm gonna run through the options on my own. I'm gonna run the numbers for each of those options. And then we're gonna sit down and I'm gonna show them, hey, this is what each of these looks like. I'm taking you to your future 10-year pleasure or pain lifestyle, your perspective. Let's take a look at that. What are you feeling? Are you happy with this? And then last but not least, which decision would you be the most happy with? You're not trying to push them towards a transaction. All you're trying to do is create clarity for them. We already know that moving, relocating, buying, selling is one of the top 5 most stressful things in someone's life. So you already have it's already loaded against you. Now your job is to cut through all the noise and say, hey, we're going to ignore those first two options. Let's just look at this option. Let's go down this path and you can tell me what you like and what you don't like. Okay, perfect. Now let's leave that option alone. Let's forget it exists. Let's look at option 2. Here's what it looks like, right? And that is exactly how you're going to be guiding your clients. Let's go to the first slide because I really like that visual. You're going to be guiding your clients along this road, and you're going to be saying, hey, exit 1, we're going to take a look at that. Exit 2, look at that. Exit 3, and then we're going to kind of weigh it against your rubric of how you're feeling about these things. Okay, so does this have a fancy name? No, this is more of a consultative approach for a fiduciary agent. So hope this was helpful. This will be in the school community, and we'll see you on our next video.